Welcome to the deep dive. Our mission, as always, is pretty straightforward.
Yeah, we take these complex, sometimes dense sources,
And we really dig in, pull out those key insights, the surprising details.
giving you that shortcut, to being genuinely informed on some really fascinating topics.
And today we're tackling something pretty intense. It's a deep dive inspired by material you might have seen over on the YouTube channel English BookCast.
That's right, we're getting into the book Abaddon Ascending. It's by Thomas R. Horn and Josh Peck.
And this one, well, it's a blend, isn't it? It's not just history.
Oh, definitely not. It pulls together ancient history, some really specific theology. Biblical prophecy is key here.
And then throws in modern cutting-edge science. We're talking CERN, particle physics, the Large Hadron Collider.
It's quite the mix. And right from the start, the authors kind of lay down a challenge, a core philosophy for how to approach this material.
They really emphasize awareness over just ignorance.
Exactly. It's not about buying into every single theory, hook, line, and sinker, or becoming paranoid. But it is about not immediately dismissing ideas just because they clash with what we, already think we know, whether that's our scientific view or our religious view.
It makes you think of that scripture they cite straight away from Hosea 4.6.
My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge.
Yeah. It frames this whole thing not as just exploring weird ideas, but as a kind of urgent search for truth.
However unsettling that truth might turn out to be.
And they double down on that with another reference.
Proverbs 18.13, the folly of answering before you've actually heard the matter out.
So the ground rules are set. Listen, examine the evidence they present, even if it pushes you way outside your comfort zone.
And the authors argue the stakes are incredibly high. This isn't just intellectual curiosity for them, it has real human consequences.
Which brings us to that really sobering story they open with. The anecdote about Chaya.
It's tragic. This happened back in 2008 in Indore, India.
Tell us about that.
Chaya was just 16, and she had been following news reports, maybe some online discussions, about CERN starting up the Large Hadron Collider. Okay.
And the fear became overwhelming for her. She apparently came to believe that turning it on would unleash some kind of global catastrophe, something destructive.
And tragically.
Tragically, she took her own life out of that fear.
Wow. That really sets a heavy tone. It shows how this bleeding-edge science, this ability to probe the fundamentals of reality.
It taps into deep-seated fears, not just scientific ones, but almost spiritual, maybe even prophetic anxieties about messing with the unknown.
So that's the starting point, this modern anxiety.
Right. And our mission today is to unpack the foundations of that anxiety, as presented in the book. We're going from that immediate fear back to the ancient concepts the authors believe inform it.
So we're covering the introduction's philosophy and then diving straight into part one of the book.
Exactly. Part one is titled Metaphysics of Doorways and Gods. We need to establish the ancient legends, the proposed mechanisms.
The doorways, the gods.
Before we tackle the modern science, the CERN connection, in our next deep dive. Gotta lay the groundwork first. Okay, let's get into that metaphysical groundwork. It starts with something you find almost everywhere in ancient cultures.
It really is universal, this persistent idea of powerful beings, deities, gods, whatever you call them, arriving on Earth.
Not originating here, but coming from somewhere else.
Yeah, the legends often describe them arriving through portals, or maybe in flying craft, things that sound, uncannily like modern UFO reports.
And they weren't just visitors. They interacted, they communicated their will.
They held dominion. They were powerful, knowledgeable entities who shaped human civilization according to these myths.
And there's that constant duality, too. Sometimes they're seen as benevolent, helpful.
Other times, distinctly malevolent or dangerous, but always powerful.
But the really crucial thread, the one the authors pick up on strongly, is that theme of interbreeding.
The mingling, yes. Across vastly different cultures, you find these stories of the gods mating with human women.
Producing hybrid offspring.
The demigods. Your Hercules figures, Gilgamesh perhaps, heroes often described as having divine parentage. It's everywhere.
And this near-universal myth sets the stage for their main theological argument, which hinges on a specific interpretation of the Bible.
Before we get to the core text, though, they use a pop culture reference to sort of frame the mindset.
Right, the movie Stargate from 1994.
And they're careful to say, look, this isn't theology, it's not scripture.
No, just a way to visualize the concept.
Exactly, a fictional blueprint. Because the movie's plot points really echo the ancient ideas they're discussing.
You've got Dr. Daniel Jackson, the archaeologist, right? And he's arguing the pyramids weren't built by the Egyptians we know.
Yeah, the technology seemed too advanced. Then the discovery of the actual Stargate,
A physical portal, activated by symbols representing star constellations.
which transports them across the galaxy to another planet.
And the villain, Ra. He's presented as this parasitic alien, looks like a classic gray.
Possessing a human host body, yeah.
Oh.
And his motive in the film.
He abducted ancient Egyptians, enslaved them to mine this special ore he needed for his technology, his survival. Pretty standard sci-fi stuff.
Okay, now here's the twist the authors introduce. They say, take that Stargate framework,
The portal, the advanced being arriving, enslaving humans.
but replace Ra's motive. It's not about mining or for survival.
What is it then, according to them?
It's about something far more sinister from their perspective. It's the desire to demonically contaminate and corrupt the human race.
Contaminate how? Physically?
Genetically. Genetically is the key. The ultimate goal in this interpretation was to corrupt the human bloodline so thoroughly.
That it would prevent the eventual birth of the Messiah, of Jesus Christ, cut off that prophesied lineage.
So in this view, the entity Ra isn't just an alien mining boss. He becomes a figure representing a literal fallen angel.
Or one of the Nephilim.
Exactly. Which brings us directly to the biblical cornerstone of their entire argument, Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 through 4.
This is the passage that really kicks off the whole controversy, isn't it?
It is. It describes the sons of God seeing the daughters of men, finding them attractive.
And taking them as wives, whomever they chose.
And the result of these unions, the Nephilim, the text calls them giants in some translations, or mighty men who were of old, the men of renown.
This is central, so let's unpack sons of God. How do the authors interpret that term?
They lean heavily on the interpretation that, particularly in the Old Testament context, like the book of Job.
Where the sons of God present themselves before the Lord.
Precisely. That the term often refers to angelic beings, not humans.
So if angels are mating with human women.
The offspring, the Nephilim, would be actual physical hybrid beings, a race of giants, potentially explaining global myths about oversized heroes or monsters.
Okay, but there's a major counter-argument here, right? Many mainstream theologians say sons of God just meant, like, righteous men from the line of Seth, or maybe human rulers or nobles.
Definitely. That's the non-supernatural interpretation. Marrying the daughters of men, maybe meaning women from the line of Cain, or just commoners.
How do Horn and Peck address that? Why insist on the angel interpretation?
They point back to the immediate context in Genesis. What happens right after this intermingling and the birth of the Nephilim?
God expresses profound regret at having made humanity.
And decides to wipe the slate clean with the Great Flood. Their argument is, look, would God decide on total annihilation just because some nobles married commoners?
Seems like an extreme reaction for just crossing social strata.
Whereas if it represents a fundamental corruption of the human genome by fallen angelic beings, an attempt to thwart God's entire plan for humanity.
Then the flood becomes, in their view, a necessary act of, like, genetic quarantine.
That's the idea. And they also tackle the New Testament objection.
Matthew 22.30, where Jesus says angels in heaven don't marry or are given in marriage.
Right. How can angels marry if Jesus said they don't? Their explanation relies on differentiating types of angels.
Okay.
They propose you have the angels in heaven who are obedient and follow that rule, but then you have the fallen angels, the demonic ones.
The ones who, according to texts like Jude, abandon their proper dwelling.
Exactly. Those angels, being on earth and in rebellion, wouldn't be bound by the rules of heaven and would have the motive foiling God's plan to engage in this forbidden act.
So if you follow this chain of interpretation, the Bible is infallible, sons of God means fallen angels, Nephilim were real hybrids.
Then the existence of literal giants on ancient earth becomes a biblical reality for them.
And suddenly all those global myths about demigods, Ra, Hercules, Osiris, Anubis, Gilgamesh.
They shift from being just imaginative stories to potentially being distorted historical accounts, accounts of actual hybrid, powerful beings Nephilim gods interacting with, ruling over, or maybe even founding ancient civilizations.
Which then leads directly into the next big puzzle, the impossible ancient structures.
The megalithic architecture. If you have these super strong, super intelligent beings walking the earth.
Maybe they could explain things like Baalbek.
Exactly. The premise is that some ancient structures seem so far beyond the known capabilities of the time.
The standard explanation of, slaves with ropes and logs.
It just doesn't seem to cut it for some of these sites. They suggest a much more advanced intelligence or capability had to be involved.
Let's get specific. Baalbek in Lebanon. Huge Roman ruins there. Temple of Jupiter.
Impressive, yes. But the real mystery is underneath. The foundation platform those Roman temples sit on.
That's where you find the Triathlon.
3 colossal stone blocks, perfectly cut, perfectly placed. And the estimated weight for each is just staggering.
Somewhere between 800 and maybe even 1,000 tons each.
Think about that. How do you quarry, transport, and lift multiple 800-ton blocks with ancient tech?
And that's not even the biggest one found there, is it?
No. In 2014, archaeologists found another, even larger block still in the quarry nearby, nicknamed Hajar al-Hibla, or Stone of the Pregnant Woman.
And its weight.
Estimated around 1,650 tons. A single cut block.
1,650 tons. It's almost impossible to visualize. What's the modern equivalent? Like 35 big rig trucks?
Something like that. All that weight in one piece. Modern heavy lift cranes struggle with weights far less than that.
So how did they do it thousands of years ago? What are the conventional theories?
Well, for the Roman-era construction on top of the platform, theories involve complex capstans, winches, lifting towers.
But even those Roman methods typically maxed out around, what, 60 tons maybe? Not 800?
Exactly. They struggle to explain the triathlon blocks. And here's the really weird part. The Roman records.
They wrote everything down, didn't they? Meticulous engineers.
Incredibly meticulous. They documented aqueducts, roads, military campaigns, lesser building feats.
But for Baalbek's foundation, the Triathlon.
Silence. Absolutely nothing in the known Roman records explains how those massive foundation stones were moved or lifted into place.
Which is suspicious if they did it themselves.
It's a huge anomaly. It leads the authors and others to suspect the Romans simply found that massive platform already there and built their temples on top of it.
Built on a pre-existing, potentially non-human foundation.
That's the implication. And when conventional history has no answer, it opens the door to, well, less conventional explanation.
Like the local legends they mention?
Yeah, Arabian lore connecting it to King Solomon, claiming he commanded jinn or used magic, maybe a word from God, to move the stones. Supernatural means.
And just when you think Baalbek is the limit, there's Mount Shoria.
In Siberia, yeah. A much more recent discovery still being studied.
But the initial reports are mind-blowing. Stones potentially weighing.
Estimates range from 3,000 to even 4,000 tons. If these are confirmed as worked, man-made masonry,
then Baalbek suddenly looks small by comparison.
It completely rewrites the scale of what was potentially achieved in antiquity. The sheer impossibility fuels the idea that someone or something far beyond standard human capability was involved.
Okay, so if we entertain this idea of superhuman builders, maybe Nephilim,
then the next concept doesn't seem quite so outlandish.
The idea of portals, gateways, stargates.
If they could build on that scale, maybe manipulating dimensions or creating transport gateways wasn't out of the question either. It becomes a plausible technology for them.
And they point to physical sites believed to be just that, like in Peru.
Puerta de Tiahuanaco, the Gate of the Gods. It's fascinating because it's not a constructed building.
It's carved into a rock face, right?
A huge natural rock outcropping. There's this perfect recessed square about 23 feet by 23 feet.
And inside that, a smaller recess.
Yeah, like a doorway or keyhole shape, maybe 6 feet tall.
And the local legends about this place are specific.
Very specific. The main story involves a priest, Amaru Meru, fleeing the Spanish conquistadors. He supposedly had a sacred golden disc from the Temple of the Seven Rays.
Okay.
He performed a ritual at this rock carving using the disc, and the legend says the solid rock opened up, shimmered, became a tunnel of light.
A literal stargate.
That's what the lore claims.
Yep.
He stepped through and vanished. And other legends say it's a gateway used by heroes, gods who came from the stars, specifically Pleiades and Orion.
Arriving and departing through solid rock.
It's treated as a genuine portal in the local tradition.
They're not far away. In Bolivia, you have Tiahuanaco.
Another enigma. A highly advanced civilization that seems to appear out of nowhere with incredibly sophisticated knowledge.
Especially mathematics and astronomy, right?
Astonishingly so. Their understanding of geometry, the fact they apparently knew the precise value of pi, their astronomical alignments, it defies the typical slow evolutionary curve of developing skills.
It's like they just showed up with the knowledge fully formed.
That's the parallel the authors draw to Ra in Stargate again. Not evolving here, but arriving with advanced prepackaged knowledge, like they poofed into existence there.
Which brings us to maybe the most famous megalithic mystery of all.
The Great Pyramid of Giza.
Unique in so many ways. Those internal chambers, kings, queens, the Grand Gallery.
And the almost complete lack of hieroglyphs inside. Most Egyptian tombs and pyramids are covered in carvings and texts.
But the Great Pyramid's main chambers are stark, bare stone.
Except for one small, debated detail.
The red paint marks.
Yeah, found way up in one of the small relieving chambers above the king's chamber, actually not near the queen's. Some researchers interpret one of the markings as possibly depicting a strange, maybe non-human figure. Bulbous head. It's controversial.
But the real focus for the authors isn't potential alien graffiti, it's the math.
The encoded mathematics and geometry of the pyramid. This is where the claims get truly mind-bending.
Let's tick through some of them. They claim a connection to Isaiah 19.
Yes, verses 19 and 20 talk about an altar and a pillar to the Lord in the midst of Egypt. Some researchers, using specific biblical measurement systems, claim the pyramid's height in inches, 5,449, matches numerical values derived from that passage.
The odds of that being coincidence
Seem incredibly remote if the calculations hold. But then there are the astronomical alignments.
The base length, measured in a specific unit, the Hebrew cubit.
Comes out to 365.2422 cubits.
Which is?
Exactly the number of days in our solar year, down to the leap year fraction, built into the foundation length.
Wow. Okay, what else?
The relationship to the sun. If you take the pyramid's original height and multiply it by 10 to the 9th power.
So height times a billion.
Basically, yes. The result is approximately 91.84 million.
Which is extremely close to the average distance from the Earth to the Sun in miles.
Again, encoding cosmic distances into its very dimensions.
And then there's a precession of the equinoxes connection, that massive cycle.
The slow wobble of Earth's axis takes about 25,827 years for the stars to appear to return to the same position. It's a huge astronomical cycle.
And the pyramid connection is?
If you measure the two base diagonals of the pyramid in pyramid inches, a unit derived from the structure itself, and add them together.
The sum is 25,827 inches.
Exactly, matching the years in the precessional cycle. Why encode something that takes nearly 26 millennia to observe, unless you had knowledge spanning vast timescales?
It's layer upon layer of apparent mathematical precision.
Yeah.
And there's one more internal connection they mentioned.
The king's chamber sarcophagus, the granite box inside.
Its internal volume, its cubic capacity.
Is claimed to be identical to the biblical dimensions given for the Ark of the Covenant in the Book of Exodus.
Suggesting a shared design standard, or maybe even a related function.
That's the implication drawn. And beyond the math, there's that weird story from the 1960s.
When scientists tried to use modern tech cosmic rays to find hidden chambers.
Yeah, the joint Egyptian-American project using, for the time, very advanced equipment to essentially X-ray the pyramid.
And it didn't go as planned.
Not at all. The computers recording the data went haywire. The readings were chaotic, contradictory, made no sense day to day.
What did the scientists say?
They were baffled. Reports quoted them talking about mysterious influences, throwing into utter confusion their equipment. One physicist involved apparently said there seemed to be some force that defies the laws of science operating within the pyramid.
So, inexplicable structures, impossible math, vanished records, global Nephilim legends, weird energy readings.
Taken together, the authors argue, it paints a picture. A picture where ancient gods use technology we barely comprehend, including potentially portals and gateways.
It wasn't just myth for them, it was engineering.
That's the foundation they lay in part one.
Okay, so if the ancient world, according to this perspective, had these gateways and superhuman architects.
The next logical step is to connect that ancient blueprint to what's happening right now.
Specifically at CERN.
Exactly. The Large Hadron Collider, the LHC, it's already famous as the largest machine ever built by humans.
Smashing particles together at near light speed, trying to recreate Big Bang conditions.
Which is incredible science in itself. But the stated goals, according to Horn, Peck, and others they cite, have evolved.
It's not just about finding the Higgs boson anymore.
Apparently not just that. The ambition now, they argue, is explicitly stated by some involved.
Right.
They're looking for other dimensions.
And not just looking for evidence of them.
But actively trying to open portals into these dimensions, trying to punch a hole through the fabric of reality.
And they actually use the Stargate analogy themselves.
It seems so. One tech writer noted that if thinking about CERN's goals makes you picture the Stargate movie...
You're spot on. That's pretty direct.
It is, and CERN itself seems to lean into the symbolic territory, maybe unintentionally, maybe not.
You mean the statue?
The giant bronze statue of the Hindu god Shiva right there on the CERN campus, gifted by India.
Shiva, the god of destruction.
Often called the Destroyer or the Transformer, he's depicted doing the Nataraja dance.
The cosmic dance to end the universe.
To destroy a weary universe, yes, so that creation can begin anew. It's the ultimate symbol of cyclical destruction and rebirth on a cosmic scale.
And the plaque next to it is key.
Absolutely crucial. It explicitly states that the statue represents the unification of ancient mythology, religious art, and modern physics.
They're making the connection themselves, linking their high-energy physics research directly to this ancient concept of cosmic transformation through destruction.
It's a startlingly overt piece of symbolism.
And the symbolism doesn't stop there, does it? It goes right down to the ground CERN is built on.
The location itself. A large part of the CERN complex sits over the French village of Saint-Genès-Pouilly.
Which has an older name.
In Roman times, it was known as Apolliacum.
And that name signifies.
The acum suffix in Latin typically meant a place, often with a villa or temple, was dedicated to someone. In this case, Apollyon.
Apollyon, the Greek name for the Hebrew Abaddon.
Both meaning the destroyer. And in the book of Revelation, chapter 9, Apollyon Abaddon is named as the angel of the abyss, the king of the bottomless pit.
So you have Shiva the Destroyer dancing on land, once dedicated to Apollyon the Destroyer, the angel of the pit, all at the site trying to open portals to other dimensions.
From the author's perspective, the symbolic alignment is, well, chilling. It seems almost deliberate.
And they bring in one more biblical connection to this portal idea.
Jacob's ladder.
From Genesis 28, Jacob has a dream.
Of a stairway or a ladder set up on the earth and its top reached to heaven. And crucially,
Angels of God were ascending and descending on it.
movement between dimensions,
Mm-hmm.
between earth and heaven. And when Jacob woke up, he called the place the Gate of Heaven.
A biblical stargate, essentially.
That's how it's framed. And again, the authors cite researchers who allegedly claim that one of CERN's specific goals is to recreate Jacob's ladder.
To reopen a portal that they believe once existed.
Yes, specifically mentioning a supposed ancient alignment between Earth, Mars, Venus, and Saturn, suggesting a time when travel between these realms via such a gate was possible.
So it moves from pure physics theory to attempting to reestablish something described in ancient scripture and myth.
The lines blur completely, whether you see it as ancient legend, biblical prophecy, or modern physics.
The core concept is the same. Interdimensional doorways, portals between realities.
And the pursuit of opening them is now, arguably, shared by both ancient lore and our most advanced science. The mythological is becoming technological.
Okay, let's pull back and synthesize this first part of the deep dive. It's been a journey.
It really has. We started with that very real, very tragic, modern fear surrounding CERN, exemplified by the story of Chaya.
A fear rooted in the potential consequences of tampering with reality's foundations.
Then we rewound thousands of years exploring these persistent global myths of intervening gods or superhuman entities.
The Nephilim interpretation of Genesis 6, the idea of fallen angels corrupting human lineage.
Leading to the puzzle of megalithic structures, Baalbek, the Great Pyramid that seemed to defy conventional explanations for their construction.
And the embedded mathematics within the pyramid, suggesting knowledge far beyond its time.
And the ancient belief, reflected in sites like the Gate of the Gods in Peru, that these places weren't just monuments but actual portals, gateways, used by those gods.
And then we brought it right back to the present day, CERN.
Where the world's biggest machine is housed on symbolically charged ground, Shiva, Apollyon.
And where scientists are, by some accounts, openly talking about discovering other dimensions and creating portals.
Actively pursuing the very technology the ancients seemed to believe existed and was used by their gods.
It's this convergence that's really striking.
That's the core takeaway from this section. Whether you read these ancient sources as mythology, as prophecy, or as distorted history.
The central theme, portals, gateways between worlds, powerful non-human intelligence, is now mirrored in the ambitions of 21st century physics.
So the provocative thought to leave you with is this. What does it mean when the line between ancient myth and cutting-edge science dissolves? What happens to our understanding of reality when the gateways discussed in hushed legends become the explicit goal of multi-billion-dollar experiments?
It's a huge question,
Man.
and it perfectly sets up where we're going next time.
Exactly. We've laid the metaphysical and mythological foundation based on the book's introduction and part one.
The why and the what from an ancient perspective.
Now we need to get into the how, according to modern science. So next time, we dive into part two, quantum physics.
We'll shift from myth and stone to the hard science, as presented in the book.
We'll explore quantum field theory, talk about the physics of the Higgs boson, the God particle, and unpack concepts like supersymmetry.
And how those theories, theoretically, might allow for hidden dimensions and the kind of reality-bending CERN is supposedly investigating.
It's where the really technical arguments come into play, supporting the possibility of these ancient ideas. You won't want to miss the scientific deep dive behind it all.
Absolutely. It's going to be fascinating. Until then, keep digging deeper.
And we'll catch you on the next deep dive. We continue the analysis and we'll now talk about, well, the very bedrock of reality itself, it seems.
That's right. Yeah, in this part of our deep dive, we're making quite a leap, aren't we?
Yeah.
From ancient history, potential portals, right into the deep end of modern physics.
The really deep end.
Absolutely. Our mission now is to really unpack the concepts that science uses to define the universe. We're talking quantum field theory, the Higgs boson, and even stretching into the hypothetical with supersymmetry.
This is where we're looking for those fundamental building blocks, right? What everything's really made of.
Exactly. And the starting point, according to the sources, is this almost dizzying idea.
That we're all just quantum fluctuations from the dawn of time.
Pretty much. That everything we see, you, me, this room, emerged from these tiny, almost imperceptible ripples in the very, very early universe. It really sets the stage for understanding just how strange reality is at its core.
It definitely forces you to rethink things. I mean, for ages, science was looking for the smallest thing, like a tiny billiard ball.
Right. The smallest piece of hard stuff. But physics moved past that. The realization was, maybe the fundamental reality isn't particles at all. Maybe it's these invisible, pervasive fields.
Fields that generate the particles.
Precisely. Which leads us inevitably to maybe the most famous discovery of the last, decade? The Higgs boson.
Ah, yes. The infamous God particle. We definitely need to talk about that name.
Oh, we will. We'll get into the science, the mechanism, but also where that really problematic nickname came from. It wasn't quite what the physicist intended initially.
Okay, let's lay the groundwork first. Where do we start with the quantum building blocks?
So the standard model, which is our current best map, it organizes everything into two basic camps based on their quantum behavior, fermions and bosons.
Fermions, those are the matter particles, right? Like quarks, electrons, the stuff that makes up atoms.
Exactly. They're the stuff. And the key thing about fermions, their defining rule, comes from something called the Pauli exclusion principle.
Which means?
Basically, they're antisocial. Only one fermion can be in the exact same quantum state at the same time. They refuse to pile up in the same spot.
And that's important because?
Because that resistance is what allows matter to have structure. It's why atoms don't just collapse into some super dense mush. Electrons keep their distance, orbiting the nucleus. Without that rule, well, everything would just implode.
Okay, so fermions are the building blocks, the matter. What about bosons?
Bosons are the communicators, the force carriers. Think photons for electromagnetism, gluons holding quarks together in the nucleus with the strong force. They mediate interactions.
And they play by different rules than fermions.
Completely different. They follow Bose-Einstein statistics. Unlike fermions, you can have multiple bosons occupying the exact same quantum space, all at the same time.
Ah, so they can pile up.
Yes. They could overlap, combine their effects. That's how you get force fields. Think of light, countless photons overlapping to create an electromagnetic wave. Or gravity, hypothetically, carried by overlapping gravitons.
The sources use a musical analogy here, which I quite liked.
Yeah, it's helpful. Imagine a concert. The fermions are like, say, trumpets or solo singers, each playing a distinct note. You can't have two trumpets playing different notes in the exact same space and time, quantumly speaking.
They maintain their individuality.
Right. But the bosons, they're like the instruments that play chords, pianos, violins. Multiple notes, multiple bosons can exist in the same spot, combining to create a richer, more complex sound. Or in physics, a force field. It's structure versus interaction.
Okay, that distinction makes sense. Now, moving up a level, quantum field theory, QFT, This is where things get really weird, isn't it? It changes the whole picture.
It really does.
Yeah.
QXT says, forget the particles is the fundamental thing. The universe, at its most basic level, is made of dozens of fields, permeating everything, everywhere.
How many fields are we talking about?
The standard model currently describes 57 known quantum fields, just everywhere, constantly.
And the particles, the electrons, photons we just talked about.
They're not fundamental objects in QFT. They're just excitations, localized ripples or fluctuations in the respective fields.
Whoa, okay. So an electron isn't a tiny ball, it's a blip in the electron field.
Exactly. A quantized vibration, a little packet of energy appearing in the electron field. A photon is a vibration in the electromagnetic field. A gluon, a ripple in the strong force field.
So when we get to the Higgs boson, it's just a fluctuation in the Higgs field.
Precisely. That's the core idea of QFT. And it's mathematically powerful because it naturally handles particles being created and destroyed.
Because it's just the field getting excited or calming down.
Right. An energy spike appears. That's a particle being created. The energy dissipates back into the field. It's annihilation. Earlier quantum mechanics really struggled with that, how particles could just pop into existence or vanish. QFT handles it elegantly.
That has some pretty profound philosophical implications, though. If particles are just temporary ripples, is matter itself kind of transient? Less solid than we think.
It certainly suggests that. Some physicists, like Sean Carroll, who's mentioned in the sources, argue very strongly. The world is made of fields, full stop. Our perception and how we measure things in quantum mechanics forces these field fluctuations to look like discrete particles to us.
But underneath, it's all continuous fields.
That's the picture QFT paints. Stability isn't about permanent little balls of stuff. It's about the enduring mathematical structure of the fields themselves.
Okay. My head is spinning slightly, but I think I'm following. Let's move into some of the really strange consequences, like wave-particle duality.
Yes, the classic quantum mystery. How can something like light or an electron be both a particle and a wave at the same time?
It just seems impossible from our everyday experience.
It does, but the experiments are clear. Light acts like a wave when it's just traveling along, spreading out. But the moment you try to detect it, measure where it is, bang, it acts like a particle, a localized little packet of energy called a photon.
And the really unnerving part is that the act of looking seems to change it. Observation forces it to choose.
That's the heart of the measurement problem. Does the wave function physically collapse? Do all possibilities happen in parallel universes? QFT gives us the math, but interpreting what it means, well, physicists are still arguing about that one.
It's just inherently weird.
It is. And our source material actually picks up on this duality, this split between the observable particle and the underlying wave potential, and draws a really interesting theological comparison.
Right, this was fascinating, comparing it to divine nature.
Yeah, and again, we're just reporting the viewpoint here. The analogy presented compares the particle aspect, the thing you can point to, measure, interact with, to Jesus, seen as the tangible, observable aspect of the divine.
Okay.
And the wave aspect, this spread out, unobservable field of potential that you can't pin down, but whose effects are everywhere, that's compared to YHWH, God the Father, the unobservable source.
So the idea is maybe human perception needs that particle-like manifestation to grasp the underlying wave-like reality. Like our detectors need the particle concept.
That's the parallel being drawn. That maybe, just as our scientific instruments translate the underlying wave mathematics into particle events, perhaps our consciousness needs a localized form to grapple with a boundless fundamental reality. It's certainly a thought-provoking way to bridge quantum mechanics and theology.
It really is. And speaking of bridging those worlds, the sources bring in Professor Don Page. He worked with Stephen Hawking, but is also a Christian. What's his take on science versus faith?
Page is quite clear he sees no fundamental conflict. He frames it as Christianity dealing with the personal side of the universe, meaning purpose, morality, while physics deals with the mathematical structure, the impersonal side.
Complementary views, not competing ones.
Exactly. He actually says something quite profound, that the existence of evil and suffering poses much bigger challenge to religious faith than anything science has ever discovered.
That really puts things in perspective. Okay, back to the physics. How did Page explain the relationship between the older quantum mechanics particles and the newer quantum field theory fields?
He emphasizes that both are really just approximations to a deeper theory we don't have yet. QM works for a fixed number of particles. QFT handles fields and particle creation destruction relativistically. But he stresses that our classical ideas, waves or particles, are just analogies.
They're not the real picture.
No, they're helpful metaphors for the true, complex mathematical reality underneath, especially when you try to bring gravity into the quantum picture, which is still the biggest hurdle.
Okay, let's tackle the big public fear. The Large Hadron Collider, the LHC. People were genuinely worried when it turned on, weren't they? What were the main concerns?
Oh, absolutely. They were pretty apocalyptic, actually. The first big fear was tiny black holes.
That the LHC would create one and it wouldn't evaporate like Hawking predicted, but would just sit there and eat the Earth.
That was the worry, yeah. A microscopic black hole that somehow becomes stable and starts accreting matter.
Yikes! And the second one, something about weird matter.
Right, the strange-lit scenario, or vacuum decay. The idea was that a high-energy collision might trigger a phase change in the vacuum, creating a bubble of a new, stable, ultra-dense state of matter.
And that would expand at nearly light speed, converting everything it touched.
Essentially destroying the universe as we know it, yes. Sounds like sci-fi, but these are based on, theoretical possibilities that had to be rigorously checked.
So how did Page and the physics community debunk these fears? What's the killer argument?
It's beautifully simple, really. Nature itself runs far more powerful experiments all the time. Cosmic rays particles from space hit our upper atmosphere with vastly more energy than the LHC can generate.
How much more energy are we talking?
Orders of magnitude more. The LHC collides protons at around, say, 13 tera-electron volts, 13 TeV. Cosmic rays can hit us with energies up to 100 exaelectron volts. That's like a million times more powerful, roughly.
So if creating Earth-eating black holes or universe-destroying strangelets was possible at LHC energies,
it would have already happened countless times over billions of years, initiated by these cosmic rays hitting Earth, the Moon, other planets. The fact that we're still here is pretty solid proof that it's safe.
the universe hasn't imploded yet.
Exactly. Nature's already done the safety check for us, and much higher energies.
That's incredibly reassuring. So if the LHC isn't really doing anything new in terms of physics phenomena, what's its actual purpose? Why build it?
Control and detection. Page explains it well. Nature produces these rare particles, like the Higgs, all the time from cosmic rays. But they decay instantly, way out in space or high in the atmosphere where we can't study them.
The LHC is like a factory located right next to a laboratory.
Perfect analogy. It reliably produces these incredibly rare fleeting particles right inside massive supersensitive detectors. That's the only way we can catch the decay products, analyze their properties, and confirm, yes, that particle actually existed for a zeptosecond.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's move on to the Higgs itself. And we have to address that nickname, the God particle. Where did that actually come from? It's so misleading.
It really is. It came from Leon Lederman, a Nobel laureate physicist, writing a popular science book. He found the search for the Higgs so incredibly difficult, expensive, and frustrating.
Yeah, he wanted to call it something else.
He originally wanted the title The Goddamn Particle to express that frustration. But unsurprisingly, the publisher wasn't keen on that.
I can imagine.
So they shortened it to the God particle. And after the discovery in 2012, the media just ran with it.
And physicists hate it because
it implies some unique divine connection that just isn't there. The Higgs is one piece of the puzzle. Crucial for mass, yes, but no more godly than an electron or a quark. It just obscures the real physics, which is about symmetry in fields.
Right, so let's get into that real physics. The prediction didn't even start with mass, did it? It started with superconductivity, zero electrical resistance.
So that's right, a seemingly unrelated phenomenon. Back in the 50s, physicists Landau and Ginzburg were trying to explain how electricity could flow with no resistance in certain supercold materials.
How do they connect that to mass?
Their radical idea was that maybe inside a superconductor, an unknown field exists that actually gives mass to photons.
But photons are massless.
Normally, yes. But they proposed that within the superconductor, photons acquire mass. This heavy photon field would then explain the lack of resistance. It was a huge theoretical leap, giving mass to a massless particle, even in a special environment.
Did that idea hold up?
It got a huge boost from BCS theory a few years later, which explained the mechanism. It showed that electrons, fermions, pair up in superconductors to form Cooper pairs, which act like bosons. And yes, these Cooper pairs interact in a way that effectively gives photons mass inside the material.
Okay, so mass gain inside a superconductor was confirmed. How did that become universal?
That was the crucial step taken by Yoichiro Nambu. He realized a similar mechanism could work everywhere, not just in superconductors, to explain why other particles have mass. But his key insight, the one that paved the way for Higgs, was about the field itself.
What about the field?
Nambu proposed that this universal mass-giving field had to be fundamentally different from all other known quantum fields. Its lowest energy state, its resting state or vacuum state, couldn't be zero.
It had to have a non-zero value even in empty space.
Exactly. All other fields, like electromagnetism, are zero when nothing's happening. They only get excited when a particle, like a photon, appears. Nambu said this new field had to be on everywhere all the time with a constant background value.
That completely changes what we mean by empty space.
Absolutely. It meant the vacuum wasn't empty at all, but filled with this baseline energy field. That was revolutionary and set the stage for Peter Higgs and others to work out the details of how that field gives mass.
Okay, so the theory was there. Then came the hunt at the LHC. The announcement was July 4th, 2012. Why was it so incredibly hard to find?
The main problem is its lifespan. The Higgs boson, once created in a collision, decays almost instantly. We're talking about 1 zeptosecond.
Which is?
A thousandth of a billionth of a second. 10 to the minus 21 seconds. It's gone before you could ever hope to detect it directly.
So you can only see the wreckage afterwards.
Precisely. Physicists have to work backwards from the decay products. They smash protons together, create a shower of particles, and look for specific combinations, specific signatures that match the predicted ways a Higgs boson should decay.
And they had predictions for its mass and how it should decay.
Yes, theoretical calculations suggested a mass around 125 gigaelectron volts, and they knew the probabilities, like 57% of the time it should decay into a bottom quark and an anti-bottom quark. But that channel is really messy, lots of background noise.
So they looked for cleaner signals.
Right. Things like decay into 2 high-energy photons or into 4 leptons, electrons, or muons. These are rarer, but they stand out more clearly from the background junk.
Like finding a specific chord in a cacophony of noise.
That's a good way to put it. Both the CMS and ATLAS experiments, independently, had to see a statistically significant bump in their data plots, right at 125 GeV. Corresponding to these decay products.
And that brings us to the famous 5 sigma threshold for discovery. What does that actually mean? Why so strict?
Sigma represents standard deviations, how far a result is from what you'd expect just by random chance, the background noise. A 5 sigma result means the observed signal is so strong that there's only about a 1 in 3.5 million chance it's just a random fluke.
Wow, that's incredibly certain.
It has to be. Particle physics history is full of exciting 3 sigma hints that just disappear when more data came in. 5 sigma is the gold standard to make sure you've really found something real and not just gotten lucky with the statistics. Both experiments hitting that independently at the same mass was the clincher.
Okay, discovery confirmed. Now, let's nail down the mechanism. You said earlier the Higgs boson doesn't give mass. It's the Higgs field. How does that work?
Right, this is the key public misconception. It all goes back to Nambu's idea of the non-zero vacuum field. The Higgs field isn't zero in empty space. It has a constant background energy value everywhere.
A baseline energy level for the whole universe.
Exactly. It's called the vacuum expectation value, or VEV. And it has a specific value, 246 GeV. This energy permeates all of space, constantly.
246 GeV everywhere.
Everywhere. Think of it like a kind of quantum treacle filling the universe.
Okay, a treacle, so particles moving through it.
Interact with it. The strength of that interaction determines the particle's mass. It's like trying to move through the treacle.
Ah, the pool analogy from the sources. The Higgs field is the water.
Exactly. If a particle interacts strongly with the Higgs field, the water, it feels a lot of drag, a lot of resistance. That resistance is its mass. Particles like the top quark interact very strongly, so they're very heavy.
And particles that don't interact much.
Like the photon. It doesn't interact with the Higgs field at all. So it feels no resistance, has no mass, and zips through at the speed of light.
So mass isn't an inherent property, it's an acquired property from interacting with this background field.
That's the Higgs mechanism in a nutshell. And that 246 GeV value is crucial too. It sets the scale for the weak nuclear force. Because the W and Z bosons, which carry the weak force, do interact strongly with the Higgs field, they become massive.
And that makes the weak force short range.
Precisely. If they were massless like the photon, the weak force would be long-range like electromagnetism, and atoms wouldn't be stable. That 246 GeV VeV is fundamental to the structure we see.
Okay, so it gives mass, but the Higgs field is also responsible for symmetry breaking. What does that mean?
Symmetry in physics usually means things are interchangeable or properties are identical. Think about the early universe at incredibly high energies. The theory says the electromagnetic force and the weak nuclear force were actually unified. They were two aspects of a single electroweak force.
Carried by four force particles that were essentially identical.
Right. Four massless carrier particles,
Yeah.
the W plus, WZ, and the photon. They were all symmetrical, interchangeable.
But they're not interchangeable now. Photons are massless. W and Z are very heavy.
Exactly. As the universe cooled down below a certain temperature, the Higgs field turned on, settling into its non-zero 246 GeV state. That was the symmetry-breaking event.
How did the field break the symmetry?
Because the different electroweak particles interacted differently with the newly established Higgs field. The W and Z bosons interacted strongly, gaining mass. The photon didn't interact at all, remaining massless.
So the field treated them differently, breaking their initial sameness.
That's it. The source uses an analogy of two identical half-circles, one plastic, one paper. They look symmetrical. But put them in water, the Higgs field.
The paper one interacts, absorbs water, loses its shape, while the plastic one doesn't.
Exactly. The water broke the symmetry. The Higgs field broke the electroweak symmetry, differentiating the photon from the W and Z, allowing the diverse forces and particles we see today. Without that break, the universe would likely be a uniform, massless soup. No structures, no chemistry, no life.
Wow, okay, so the standard model with the Higgs seems pretty complete, but it isn't, right? There are still big holes.
Oh yeah, big ones. It doesn't include gravity in a quantum way. It doesn't explain dark matter, which makes up most of the matter in the universe.
Yeah.
It doesn't explain dark energy. And it has some internal mathematical stability issues, like the hierarchy problem.
Which leads us to the next big idea, supersymmetry, or SUSY.
Right. SUSY is probably the most popular, most mathematically compelling idea for physics beyond the standard model. It's an attempt to fix those holes.
And the core idea is more particles.
A lot more particles. SUSY proposes a fundamental symmetry between the two types of particles we talked about: fermions, matter, and bosons, forces. It says every fermion we know has an undiscovered, heavier boson superpartner.
And every boson we know has a heavier fermion superpartner.
Exactly. It's a symmetry transformation. And the really elegant part is that if you perform this swap mathematically in the equations describing nature, the equations basically stay the same. The math seems to demand this symmetry exists.
But why propose it? Just for mathematical beauty? Or does it solve problems?
It solves major problems. The biggest one is the hierarchy problem you mentioned.
Remind me what that is again.
It's about the Higgs mass. When physicists calculate quantum corrections to the Higgs mass from all the known particles, the math predicts the Higgs should be ridiculously heavy, trillions of times heavier than the 125 GeV we actually measured.
Which would wreck the whole theory.
Completely. You'd need unbelievable fine-tuning to cancel out these huge corrections. Supersymmetry provides a natural solution. For every standard model particle adding a huge positive correction to the Higgs mass.
Its superpartner adds a huge negative correction.
Precisely. The contributions from the particle and its superpartner almost perfectly cancel out, keeping the Higgs mass light and stable without any artificial fine-tuning. It's incredibly elegant.
Okay, so if C to Y is real, the particle zoo gets much bigger.
At least doubles. And these superpartners must be heavier than their regular counterparts, otherwise we'd have found them already. That's why the LHC is pushing to higher energies to try and create and detect these particles.
And they have fun names, right?
They do. The superpartners of fermions, like quarks and leptons, are bosons, and they get an S prefix. So you have squarks and sleptons.
Squarks, okay. And the partners of bosons?
They're fermions and get an EO suffix. So the partner of the gluon is the gluino, the partner of the Higgs boson is the Higgsino, the partner of the photon is the photino, and so on.
Gluino, Higgsino, catchy. Have we found any yet?
Not a single one, unfortunately.
Yeah.
That's a big challenge for SUSY right now. The LHC hasn't seen any definitive evidence yet, pushing the expected masses for these particles higher and higher.
But if they are found, the benefits would be huge beyond just fixing the Higgs mass.
Enormous. First, unification of forces. Remember how the electromagnetic, weak and strong forces almost meet at high energy in the standard model, but not quite.
Yeah, it's close, but no cigar.
If you add the effects of all the predicted supersymmetric particles into the calculations, those three force strengths converge perfectly at a single high-energy point. It's the cleanest path we have towards a potential theory of everything.
Wow. Okay, that's big. What else?
The other massive implication is dark matter. SUSY provides one of the best explanations for it.
How so?
The theory naturally predicts that the lightest supersymmetric particle, often called a neutralino, a mix of the partners of the photon Z boson and Higgs bosons, should be stable, electrically neutral, and interact very weakly with normal matter.
Which are exactly the properties astronomers think dark matter must have.
Exactly. It's a perfect dark matter candidate arising naturally from the theory. So the search for particles of the LHC is also, in a very real sense, a search for the identity of the dark matter that dominates the universe's mass.
It's incredible how these searches for Higgs stability, force unification, dark matter all seem to point towards this deeper, possibly supersymmetric layer of reality. It really makes you question what we perceive.
It absolutely does. Is the reality we see just the tip of the iceberg? Is the standard model just one half of a much larger, perfectly symmetrical picture? The search for COI is trying to answer that. It forces us to accept our current understanding is powerful, but definitely incomplete.
So we've journeyed deep into the quantum realm. From the fields that might be the true foundation of reality, Professor Page's calming perspective on LHC safety, the intricate dance of the Higgs field giving mass and breaking symmetry, all the way to the tantalizing, if still unproven, promise of supersymmetry.
It's been quite a tour of the fundamental forces and particles.
And where the sources take us next seems even more profound, linking these cutting-edge physics concepts to even bigger questions about cosmology, the universe's fate, and even ancient prophecy.
That's right. Next, we will move on to the final part of the book, Part 3, Quantum Prophecy, and explore those fascinating and perhaps controversial connections. In this last part, we'll talk about really the ultimate connection. We're looking at deep physics, cosmic structure, ancient prophecy, all drawn from the sources you shared.
Yeah, this is where it all comes together, at least where the author's trying to connect these huge domains.
We're synthesizing the most provocative material from Part 3, Quantum Prophecy.
Right.
Our mission today really is to dive deep into these theories, extra dimensions, quantum consciousness, even these really high-stakes end-time scenarios.
Right.
And then we'll wrap up with the author's final perspective on, well, how to stay informed and centered through all this potential chaos.
We definitely saved the heaviest lifting for last here, because this segment, it's where the theoretical physics we've been kind of tracking, things like field theory, particle acceleration, it basically slams right into some of the most profound and, frankly, some of the oldest religious texts.
We're definitely moving beyond the standard model physics here.
Oh, absolutely. We're looking at how these deep mysteries of the universe, dark matter, the false vacuum state, how they might actually map onto these centuries-old warnings about, well, the end of time.
And the goal is really to understand the technical arguments the source authors are putting forward for these, frankly, pretty shocking correlations.
Exactly. It's about understanding their reasoning, the connections they're drawing.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Let's start with a concept that just fundamentally forces us to rethink everything about the universe's timeline. Rainbow gravity theory.
Right. Gravity's rainbow, sometimes called that.
I get that it avoids the need for a singularity, that Big Bang starting point, but
Yeah.
how does it do that scientifically, and why does that have such radical implications?
Okay, so the core idea of rainbow gravity is that gravity's effect on light actually depends on the light's energy, or its wavelength.
Which is different from general relativity, right?
Totally different. In standard GR, all photons, regardless of energy, follow the same path in a gravitational field. But rainbow gravity suggests gravity acts more like a prism. It separates light based on color, on frequency.
Okay, that's already a huge shift from established physics. So what does that wavelength dependence mean for the universe's origin then?
Well, it means if you try to trace time backward, the universe gets denser, sure, but the gravitational force itself changes based on the energy of that really ancient light. And the math, crucially, it shows that because of this energy-dependent effect, the universe approaches infinite density asymptotically. It gets infinitely close to a Big Bang singularity, but it never actually reaches it.
Wow. So, okay, if the universe never actually hits that singularity, then the starting gun for the Big Bang never really fired, which means, mathematically anyway, the universe is infinitely old.
Precisely. That is the earth-shattering implication, as the sources put it, an infinitely old universe, no necessary beginning.
Which just completely eliminates the need for a single moment of creation.
Exactly. And that's where you get this sharp absolute contrast with, say, the traditional biblical timeline. Like you mentioned Exodus 20.11, God creating everything in 6 days.
Right.
These two views, temporal infinity versus a finite creation event, they're just fundamentally incompatible, mutually exclusive.
That is a staggering claim. It really makes you question if modern physics can truly operate in a vacuum, separate from these bigger theological or philosophical ideas about beginnings and ends.
It really does blur those lines.
And how does something tangible, like the Large Hadron Collider, the LHC, how does that fit into testing a concept this huge, this cosmic?
Okay, so the LHC provides a really key experimental testbed here. One of the requirements for rainbow gravity theory to even be plausible is the existence of extraspatial dimensions.
Right, which we've touched on before, M theory and all that.
Exactly. So when particles collide at these incredibly high energies in the LHC, we're basically probing physics at scales that mirror conditions right after the supposed Big Bang. Now, if miniature black holes are produced in these collisions, and importantly, if they decay in very specific ways, that would give significant weight to M theory, to the idea of extra dimensions, and by extension, it would support the rainbow gravity model.
So proving extra dimensions exist through these collisions helps make the case for an infinitely old universe.
It definitely bolsters the claim. It potentially provides a way to circumvent the standard Big Bang model entirely.
Okay, this is where it gets, really intense.
Yeah.
Connecting this high-energy physics to a potential, immediate doomsday scenario, the false vacuum.
Yeah, this one's unsettling.
We hear empty space, but the sources say the universe is actually in a false vacuum state right now. What does that mean in terms of, field physics?
Right. So when physicists talk about empty space, they're really talking about the Higgs field, the field that gives particles mass being at its lowest energy state.
Okay.
But, and this is the paradox, that lowest state isn't zero energy. It actually has a non-zero value, about 246 giga-electron volts. Think of it like a marble resting in a shallow dip on a huge, bumpy landscape. That dip, that potential, well, it's stable enough for now. The marble doesn't roll out easily.
That's our false vacuum state. Stable, but not the most stable.
Exactly. It's stable for now, but it's not the absolute lowest point on the landscape. The true vacuum state would be the marble resting way down in the deepest valley. That would mean the Higgs field settling at an even lower energy value, maybe zero. And physics suggests that state is actually energetically preferred in the long, long run.
That analogy, the marble in the shallow dip, it sounds terrifyingly precarious.
It does make you feel a bit uneasy.
And theoretical physicist Joseph Liken, he certainly amplified that worry, warning about a possible trigger.
He did. Liken warned that we basically live with this constant low-level risk of an unlucky quantum fluctuation.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means if just one Higgs boson anywhere in space just randomly tunnels through the energy barrier, separating our false vacuum from the true vacuum, it sets off an energetic cascade. The Higgs field collapses locally to its lower energy state, creating this bubble of true vacuum.
A bubble.
A bubble that expands at the speed of light, and crucially, it destroys every atomic structure it touches. It instantaneously rewrites the laws of physics inside it. Liken bluntly called it a fireball of doom.
A firewall of doom. Wow. And what's just fascinating, or maybe terrifying, is how the source material links this specific scientific threat, this Higgs field collapse, to ancient prophecy, specifically 2 Peter 3.9.
Yeah, the connection they draw is, well, it's compelling because the language seems to mirror the theoretical mechanism almost perfectly.
Ouch.
Peter describes how the heavens will pass away with a great noise and the elements will melt with fervent heat. You get the macro scale destruction, the heavens passing away, and then the micro scale destruction.
Okay, let's focus on that word, elements. That sounds key.
It really is. The Greek word used there is snoshauen. Now, sometimes it just means foundational principles, but in the context of first-century writing and later interpretations, it can definitely mean foundational matter, elementary particles.
Ah.
So the prophetic language, the elements melting with fervent heat, it sounds remarkably like the theoretical physics description of the Higgs bubble violently undoing reality at the level of elementary particles. The heat, the noise, the sudden unmaking, it maps almost directly onto the scientific catastrophe model.
So if these kinds of existential risks are, technically conceivable, even if scientists say the probability is super low, how do the scientific community and, importantly, the authors of our source material suggest we navigate this information? It really forces a discussion about communicating risk and, maybe more importantly, our own presuppositions.
It absolutely forces us to look at our own filters, our own biases. Look, physicists like Sean Carroll, they're honest about the data. They admit these things, black holes at the LHC, strange matter, vacuum decay, are conceivable. But using Bayesian probability, they stress the probability is negligible. They basically say, yeah, it could happen, but the odds are so astronomically tiny that worrying is irrational.
But the authors, they really stress that the learner, you listening right now, you have a personal responsibility that goes beyond just accepting the establishment's probability calculation. You need to understand why the experts might minimize the risks.
Exactly. That's the core advice. It's this personal responsibility to wade through the data from both sides. You've got the establishment view, which often operates from a place of reductionist materialism, basically. Only physical, observable stuff is real.
Okay.
And then you have private researchers who often bring in metaphysical, supernatural, or theological possibilities into their models. You have to understand the presuppositions guiding each group.
So we're not just analyzing the data, we're analyzing the interpreters of the data and their potential blind spots.
Correct. The source material really hammers this home. A lack of knowledge or intellectual diligence is destructive, as Hosea says, and acting before you gather all the facts is just foolish, like Proverbs warns. So if one side automatically dismisses anything non-material, they might miss data points that hint at a higher, maybe non-physical risk factor.
Conversely, if the other side sees prophecy in every little thing, they might blow trivial stuff way out of proportion.
Precisely. So the learner's task, your task, is to try and hold both filters in your mind at the same time. Consider both perspectives. And that's a really challenging exercise in, like, cognitive balance.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Moving from these huge universal timelines and doomsday scenarios, let's look at the mysteries right here, right now in our cosmic reality. I mean, it's still just a sobering fact. 95.1% of the universe is unseen, unknown.
Yeah, 26.8% dark matter, 68.3% dark energy. It's the ultimate humility check for science, isn't it?
It really is. We build all our models based on just, what, 4.9% of what's actually out there?
And dark matter, we only see it because of its huge gravitational pull on the stuff we can see. But it doesn't interact with light at all.
So this massive gap in our understanding, it's naturally led to some pretty wild theoretical leaps, right? Like the possibility of extra dimensions.
Exactly. That's a major contender.
So the theory is basically that dark matter might just be normal matter, but hiding out in extra spatial dimensions. How would that work? How could it be there without us detecting it directly?
Okay, this is where we get into things like M theory or brain world cosmology. Imagine our universe, all three spatial dimensions plus time, as a kind of membrane, a brain floating in a higher dimensional space called the bulk.
Okay, like a sheet of paper in a room.
Sort of, yeah. Now, the idea is that all the matter and forces we know, electromagnetism, the strong and weak nuclear forces, they're basically stuck on our brain. They can't leave it.
Right.
But there's one force that's theorized to be different. Gravity.
Gravity can travel through the bulk, between dimensions.
That's the hypothesis. The particle of gravity, the graviton, is imagined as this tiny, closed, vibrating string that's free to roam through the bulk, through these extra dimensions.
Ah, okay.
So if dark matter exists in one of these hidden dimensions, the only way it could interact with our visible universe, our brain, would be through gravity, carried by those roaming gravitons.
Now, because dark matter wouldn't interact with photons, which are stuck on our brain.
We couldn't see it, but we'd still feel its gravity. It actually explains the observed effects of dark matter pretty neatly without needing some totally new kind of particle in our three dimensions.
That makes the invisible 95% feel a bit less mystical and more like a geometric puzzle.
Kind of, yeah.
But then there's dark energy, this mysterious force that's making the universe expand faster and faster. And this is tied to a really non-intuitive theory involving reverse entropy. How do the sources even justify suggesting the universe's expansion could actually be a contraction moving backward in time? That sounds wild.
It is perhaps the most mind-bending speculation in the source material, yeah? We know the second law of thermodynamics, right? Systems tend towards more disorder, more entropy as time moves forward. Eat death, basically.
Right. Standard arrow of time.
But dark energy seems to defy that. It's pushing expansion faster.
So, wait. If dark energy is supposed to be a reverse contraction, doesn't that just break basic physics? How do the authors explain that?
They acknowledge it seems to break the rules within our perceived flow of time. The theory proposes that the acceleration we see isn't really a forward effect. It's the result of a contraction that's initiated by some massive cataclysmic future event. And we are perceiving the influence of that future event traveling backward along the arrow of time towards us. Mathematically, apparently, what looks like exponential expansion going forward in time looks exactly like a contraction if you view it moving backward in time.
Whoa, a closed loop of time.
Yeah.
A future catastrophe dictating our present cosmic behavior.
Right.
How does prophecy connect to this idea of a closed contracting timeline?
It connects through this idea of the absolute end of time. Revelation 10, verses 5 through 7, describes an angel swearing an oath that there should be time no longer.
Time literally stops.
Right. So if the timeline just ends abruptly, if the whole system is halted by, say, divine intervention, the sheer energy involved in that final cataclysm, that absolute end of time, has to go somewhere.
Okay.
The theory posits that the energy wave from that conclusion ripples backward into the universe's past. And that backward traveling wave creates the effect we currently measure as dark energy, pulling everything back towards its origin, closing the loop. It suggests the universe is already reacting to its own predetermined end.
That is a chilling thought.
Yeah.
That our cosmic future is already pulling the strings of our present.
Okay, let's bring it back down to the quantum scale and maybe something more tangible. Technology. Quantum computing relies on harnessing entanglement, right? This spooky action at a distance.
Instantaneous communication between particles, yeah.
And this is often explained using the flatland analogy. Let's really try to flesh that out clearly. The flatland analogy is, it's pretty indispensable for trying to visualize higher dimensions. So imagine you're a two-dimensional being living on a flat surface, flatland. You only perceive length and width, no height.
Okay.
Now, if a three-dimensional object, like a sphere, passes through your two-dimensional plane...
You wouldn't see a sphere.
No. You'd see a point appear, then grow into a circle, then shrink back to a point, and vanish. That's the sphere's cross-section passing through your world.
Right.
Now, what if 2 points on that sphere pass through your plane at the same time, maybe at opposite ends of a diameter? The Flatlander would see 2 separate circles that seem to be behaving identically, maybe changing size or position together instantaneously.
And they'd assume those 2 circles were somehow communicating instantly across the distance, separating them in their 2D world.
Exactly. The Flatlander would have no concept that these 2 seemingly separate circles are just 2 different slices of the same single object existing in a higher third dimension.
So applying that, entangled particles might not be communicating instantly.
They might just be, 3-dimensional slices or perspectives of a single higher dimensional object that exists outside our normal space-time. That's why the connection appears instantaneous to us.
Okay. And the push for quantum computing wants to harness that connection.
Yeah.
But current electronics have this problem with heat and inefficiency because of how electrons behave, right? Backscattering.
Yeah, that's a major hurdle. Electrons bump into defects in the material or each other. They scatter backward, generate heat, lose efficiency. It limits how complex and stable we can make things.
But then came the discovery of wild fermions in 2015. How did that potentially offer a solution?
That discovery in a material called tantalum arsenide was huge for solid-state physics. Wild fermions are these really weird particles. Inside the crystal, they act like they're massless, and they have this property called chirality, like a handedness.
Okay. And why is that important?
Because it allows them to behave uniquely. Unlike electrons, which scatter all over the place, wild fermions, critically, they don't suffer from this backscattering. They flow much more independently.
So they're just fundamentally more efficient carriers of current.
Orders of magnitude more efficient, potentially. They've been described as having their own internal GPS or something. They basically move forward in a straight line, steering around obstacles without scattering backward.
Wow.
This means they could carry an electronic signal across a chip much more stably, with far less heat loss than electrons. It basically eliminates a major technological roadblock for creating stable, maybe even room temperature quantum computers that can reliably handle entanglement.
Okay, and finally, in this segment, we turn to maybe the ultimate personal mystery, consciousness itself. We're moving from smashing particles to the potential discovery of the corticon, a possible physical component of the soul.
This comes out of quantum brain dynamics, or QBD theory. It's an attempt to bridge quantum mechanics and neuroscience. The theory hypothesizes this thing called the cortical field, a non-material dynamic field generated by the brain's cortex. And the source authors argue this field is the physical basis, the substrate of consciousness.
And like other fields, it would have a particle associated with it.
That's the idea, a particle fluctuation of the cortical field, which they've dubbed the corticon.
Okay, so if consciousness, or its substrate, has a particle fluctuation, then maybe it could be discovered, measured, even manipulated, maybe using something like the LHC.
That is the terrifying leap the sources make, yes. If corticons are real, and if we could discover them and define their quantum state, you potentially move from just understanding consciousness to controlling it.
Transhumanists might see that as a path to immortality, maybe transferring consciousness to a machine.
Right, but the sources raise a much darker, more menacing possibility: technological consciousness replacement.
Explain that. What's the mechanism for that kind of technological horror?
Well, if the cortical field can be measured, maybe it can also be manipulated, perhaps even erased or overridden. The implication is that some advanced technology could potentially destabilize a person's existing cortical field,
You mean,
effectively killing your consciousness, your self-awareness, and maybe replacing it with a synthesized one created in a lab, maybe uploaded from somewhere else. Or, and this is the most sinister angle in the sources, perhaps one summoned from another realm, outside our known dimensions, using controlled particle acceleration tech.
wow.
It really highlights the potential spiritual danger inherent in trying to crack the physical code of self-awareness itself.
Okay, this idea of intentionally or even accidentally manipulating fields and opening portals, whether it's to summon a replacement consciousness or just searching for extra-dimensional gravitons, this brings us right to the heart of the prophetic warnings in the source material.
Yeah, the convergence point.
We have to start with the tech capability.
Yeah.
We know gravity waves were detected, right? That happened
Yeah.
definitively in 2015, 2016 from emerging black holes. Greater than 5 sigma proof. Huge validation.
Absolutely. LEGO's detection of those waves was a massive triumph for general relativity. It proved gravity waves are real, and that, in turn, validated the search for gravitons, the hypothesized particles that carry gravity.
Right. So now that we know the waves exist, the hunt for the graviton particle itself at the LHC becomes even more intense, more focused.
And since gravitons are the particles theorized to travel between dimensions.
Exactly. The sources speculate that if scientists successfully find and learn how to manipulate gravitons, it could lead directly to developing some kind of interdimensional communication device.
A way to actually open a door, potentially allowing beings from other dimensions to present themselves to our world.
That's the speculation presented, yes.
Yes.
A means to bridge dimensions.
And in that context, the specific location and the symbolism around CERN itself, it feels, well, intensely suggestive, as the authors point out.
It really does. CERN sits on the French-Swiss border. A big chunk of its land is near a place called Saint-Genès-Puy.
Okay.
Historically, that area was known in Roman times as Apolliacum. It had a Roman town and, significantly, a temple dedicated to the Roman god Apollon. This isn't some obscure connection. It's well-documented history.
Why is Apollon significant here? What's the link? Because Apollon is explicitly linked linguistically and mythologically to Apollyon, which is the Hebrew word for the destroyer.
The destroyer from Revelation.
Exactly. Revelation 9.11 specifically identifies Apollyon as the angel, the king, who commands the terrifying army released from the bottomless pit.
So the fact that the world's most powerful machine, built to probe the fabric of reality, searching for interdimensional particles, is operating on land historically dedicated to the destroyer,
is a piece of symbolic prophetic context that the source authors place enormous emphasis on. They see it as highly significant.
Okay, this symbolism leads us straight into the prophecy about the bottomless pit actually opening. Let's detail that sequence in Revelation 9.
Right. The sequence starts with a being, described as an angel or maybe a star falling from heaven, referred to as him. This being is given the key to the shaft of the bottomless pit, the abyss.
Okay.
When he uses the key, the pit opens and this huge plume of smoke pours out, like from a giant furnace darkening the sun in the air.
And out of the smoke.
Out of the smoke come these creatures, described as locusts, which are unleashed onto the earth. But they're explicitly told not to kill people, only to torment those who don't have the seal of God on their foreheads, and only for a specific period, 5 months.
And these are obviously not regular locusts. The description is incredibly detailed and suggests something unnatural, hybrid, bioengineered.
Absolutely not natural insects. The text in Revelation 9, verses 7 and 8 is super specific. They have shapes like horses prepared for battle, okay? But they have faces like the faces of men.
Human faces on horse-like bodies.
And hair like the hair of women, and teeth like the teeth of lions. This mix and match of human and animal features just screams genetic manipulation or some kind of hybrid creation.
Yeah.
The source authors draw this parallel. These beings are like an intentional demonic antithesis of the heavenly cherubim, which are often described with multiple composite faces: man, ox, lion, eagle. These creatures from the abyss represent a corrupted, hellish mockery of heavenly design. A powerful, armored army described elsewhere by the prophet Joel as being essentially invincible to human weapons.
This whole theme of hybridization, the return of unnatural beings, it brings us right back to Genesis, doesn't it? The days of Noah, the Nephilim.
Yes, exactly. The connection is rooted in Daniel's prophecy about that final world empire, the statue with the feet of iron mixed with clay.
Daniel chapter 2.
Right. Daniel 2, verse 43 contains that really chilling prediction. They shall mingle themselves with the seed of men.
Okay, and the interpretation here is key.
According to the sources, the key interpretation is that they doesn't just mean different human groups intermarrying. It refers to a return of hybrid beings. The giants, the Nephilim from Genesis 6.
The offspring of the sons of God interpreted as fallen entities and human women.
Correct. The Nephilim, also called the Gibrim, the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. That lineage.
And the original archetype of this rebellion in the ancient world was linked directly to Nimrod and the Tower of Babel.
That's right. Nimrod, identified in extra-biblical sources as a descendant and leader of these Gibrim or Nephilim, he was the architect of Babel.
And the tower wasn't just about height.
Not just arrogance, no. The sources argue it was engineered using forbidden, maybe occult knowledge about dimensional mechanics, perhaps to function as a stargate, a gateway.
A gateway to where?
Designed to facilitate direct contact with the powerful entities Nimrod served, sometimes called the Gate of the Gods in ancient texts. The prophecy, as interpreted by these authors, suggests that this original site of rebellion, Babylon, might be the future location where these gates open again and these giants return, helping to set up the final global system.
Wow. Okay, so that sets the stage perfectly for the final figure who orchestrates all this, who facilitates this global system, the Antichrist.
That's right. The Antichrist figure is prophesied under titles like the Son of Perdition, which can literally translate as the male progeny of the destroyer Apollyon.
The son of Apollyon.
Yes. He's described as this man of fierce countenance who rises to power, not just through politics or military might, but by leveraging this supernatural dimensional power that's being unleashed. He facilitates the one-world system.
The classic triad: universal religion, global socialist economy, one-world government.
Exactly. And this figure, who ultimately demands worship, exalts himself as God, is seen as the culmination of this ancient, ongoing scheme to corrupt humanity and dominate the earth using forbidden power and knowledge. #tag conclusion.
Okay, this is a lot. It requires holding complex physics, ancient history, intense prophecy all together in your mind at once. So to try and ground us a bit, let's look at a concrete scientific discovery. The pentaquark, found in 2015, is maybe a model for how we should try to interpret future scientific events.
Yeah, that's a useful case study the sources bring up.
A pentaquark is a particle with 5 quarks, right? More complex than usual protons or neutrons.
Yeah.
What were the 2 different ways people interpreted this discovery?
So when the pentaquark was confirmed, almost immediately there was this fringe interpretation that jumped on the occult significance of the number 5. They linked it to pentagrams, suggesting the discovery itself had dark spiritual undertones.
Okay, the occult angle. What was the alternative?
The alternative perspective, often coming from a more theological viewpoint, saw the pentaquark simply as, well, a new complex building block of creation. Evidence of the creator's incredibly intricate design, not some demonic symbol hidden in the particle zoo.
And the authors argue that even this physical discovery can be linked back to a spiritual number using numerology to sort of ground it theologically.
Yes, specifically citing the work of E.W. Bullinger on biblical numerology. The number 5 in his system is consistently linked to the grace of God.
How do they get there?
Well, one way is seeing it as 4 plus 1. 4 represents the physical creation, the material world, the earth. And 1 represents divine strength or unity. So 4 plus 1 equals 5, representing God's grace acting upon or within his creation. The point being that the physical reality of God's creation is always undergirded by his sustaining grace. And grace, thinking of Ephesians 2.89, is ultimately the believer's defense against the enemy's works, especially schemes based on human effort or forbidden knowledge.
Okay, so if we absorb all of this, the possibility of an infinitely old universe, the risk of vacuum decay, the reality of hidden dimensions, the potential for consciousness manipulation, these prophecies of hybrid armies and portals opening near Apollyon's old temple. I mean, what is the ultimate takeaway here for the learner, for you listening? How do we balance being informed, being prepared, without just falling into paralyzing anxiety or fear.
Yeah, that's the crucial question. And the overarching message synthesized from all these sources is really one of responsibility over fear.
Responsibility, not panic.
Exactly. The sheer volume of just strange and intense material giants returning, portals opening, consciousness being technologically replaced. It's presented, the authors argue, not to make you panic. It's presented for preparation.
So you're not caught off guard.
Precisely. The authors stress that if you are watching, if you're aware, if you're prepared, you're insulated from the shock, the element of surprise. We need to keep watching, stay centered, but never descend into fear, especially if our foundation is secure in the ultimate source of reality.
And the ultimate, the paramount skill needed for anyone trying to navigate these potential end times, regardless of which physics theory or prophetic interpretation turns out to be right.
It comes down to love. The authors reiterate this powerfully at the end. Regardless of the global chaos, the absolutely essential skill for believers is love, as defined so clearly in 1 Corinthians 13.
Patient, kind, not envious, not boastful.
Doesn't insist on its own way, rejoices with the truth, and fundamentally, love never ends. It endures all things. This spiritual capacity, this love, is presented as the anchor. It's what enables people to withstand whatever is coming, to maintain their composure, and crucially, to positively influence others. That remains the ultimate, enduring priority, especially when everything else seems to be falling apart.
That's a really profound final thought. That amidst talk of collapsing vacuums and dimensional portals, our ultimate stability might be found in something entirely non-physical. Love.
It connects the quantum right back to the spiritual, doesn't it? Maybe the ultimate reality isn't a particle, but a principle, the ultimate power against the destroyer.
Well, thank you for joining us on this very deep dive into some truly challenging and fascinating material where cutting-edge science seems to collide with the depths of ancient prophecy.
It's been quite a journey through these sources.
We really appreciate your engagement and interaction with the channel, especially for providing us with such rich, complex, and layered source material to work through together.
Yeah, the listener contributions are invaluable.
If this discussion has sparked your curiosity, if you found value in this synthesized analysis, please do consider sharing the channel with others who might find it interesting. And of course, we highly encourage you to subscribe for more deep dives into these unseen corners of research, mystery, and maybe even reality itself.